day 797 of the Trump administration as the political world continues to react, along with the public, to a 4-page summary letter by the Attorney General. And amid increasing pressure to release the actual Mueller report, the president is building on his theme of total exoneration with an eye toward the coming battles, perhaps, with Democrats on Capitol Hill. Tonight, Donald Trump talked with Fox News host Sean Hannity about Mueller's investigation. He called it a scam, said it was led by treasonous people.
This was an attempted takeover of our government, of our country, an illegal takeover. And if it were the other way around, where I was doing it to President Obama or a Democrat, it would be virtually the maximum sentence that you can find no matter where you look in whatever legal book.
House Democrats, in the meantime, are staking out their positions. 3 lawmakers are telling NBC News that key oversight committees are exploring legal options, including but not limited to the possibility of issuing subpoena to Special Counsel Robert Mueller. That would mean bypassing the Attorney General William Barr. Earlier today, House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler of New York said he spoke on the phone with the Attorney General about the April 2nd deadline that Democrats have set for the release of the Mueller report.
I asked him about the length and breadth of the Mueller report. He told me it was a very substantial report, a very substantial report. I asked him when we would see it, and he couldn't get specific. He said weeks, not months. It is apparent that the department will not meet the April 2nd deadline that we set, and I'm very disturbed by that. I asked whether he could commit that the full report, an unredacted full report with the underlying documents, evidence, would be provided to Congress and to the American people, and he said he wouldn't commit to that.
New polling from CNN, meantime, shows 57% of Americans want Congress to pursue hearings into the findings of the Mueller report. 43% want Congress to take no action and end the investigation completely. Same polling showing 56% saying the president has not been exonerated of collusion, while 43% say he has. Amid these developments, we are also hearing from some big figures in the Russia inquiry. Today, Lester Holt sat down for an exclusive interview with former FBI Director James Comey, whose firing, of course, launched the Mueller appointment. Here's what Trump said about that firing, you'll recall, back then.
When I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story.
And now back to Comey. Here's what he said today about that very admission from the president.
I thought that's potentially obstruction of justice, and I hope somebody is going to look at that. Again, the president appears to be saying, I don't know what's in his head, which is why I can't reach the conclusion. What he appears to be saying is, I got rid of this guy to shut down an investigation that threatened me.
Next, Comey was asked about Mueller choosing not to make a call, apparently, on whether Trump obstructed justice.
Mr. Mueller decides not to make a judgment on that particular issue. Does that alone surprise you?
It does. The purpose of a special counsel is to make sure that the politicals, in this case the Attorney General, doesn't make the ultimate call on whether the subject of the investigation, the President of the United States, should be held criminally liable for activities that were under investigation. And so the idea that a special counsel wouldn't reach the question and hand it to the political leadership doesn't make sense. I'm not prejudging it. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense on its face.
Meanwhile, there's been a rather surprising assessment of what evidence might be contained in the Mueller report, and it came from Fox News legal analyst Andrew Napolitano.
If there were no evidence of conspiracy and no evidence of obstruction, the Attorney General would have told us so. He didn't. So there is something in there that the Democrats and opponents of the president want to see. They will see it, and they'll make hay out of it. And then they'll second-guess Bob Mueller as to whether or not it is enough evidence to meet the legal standard of proof of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
On that point, let's bring in our leadoff panel on a Wednesday night. Mimi Rocah, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, now a distinguished fellow in criminal justice at the Pace University School of Law. Michael Schmidt, Pulitzer Prize-winning Washington correspondent for the New York Times. And Sam Stein, back with us, political editor for the Daily Beast. Good evening and welcome to you all. Mimi, I'd like to begin with you and with this question. We've had a string of guests come in here and describe Bob Mueller as almost an egoless figure, though he is clearly not without pride. What is the chance that Mueller is watching some of this, feeling that his work has been misportrayed and his decisions have perhaps been misreported?
So, look, I would never presume to speak for Bob Mueller. I will say, like everybody, we've all watched him closely over the past 18 months, and he's obviously a patient man. I mean, he didn't react every time Donald Trump, called him conflicted and called it a witch hunt and, et cetera. And I really have to believe that while there is a lot of misinterpretation at this point going on about what Mueller has or hasn't said, right? He has not said no collusion, at least as far as we know through Barr's own words. That is not what Mueller said. And so to the extent that is being repeated, that must be frustrating to him. But he has a report, and we now at least have a clue that it's a very substantial report, which could mean, apparently less than 1,000, but clearly more than several hundred pages if it's substantial. And I think that he understands that that report will come out because it has to, because that is the only way that we are going to fully understand here what happened. As far as we know, Bob Mueller took one thing off the table so far, and that is the charge of a criminal conspiracy of Trump and other people around his campaign with the Russians to interfere in our election. That is what we know at this point. That leaves a lot on the table. And every American on both sides, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, should want to know the degree of what else is on the table. Is it nothing? Is it something? Is it a lot? Because the only standard we know right now that Bob Mueller apparently said wasn't met was proof beyond a reasonable doubt as to collusion, as to conspiracy and obstruction. There's something substantial there. We know that. We know that from Bob Mueller.
Mike Schmidt, on the question of the Russians, I want to play for you some of Comey wanting us to think about the Russians a little differently and insert a different country. We'll talk about this on the other side.
Close your eyes. Again, change the names. Let me make one up for you. The Iranians, this is totally made up, the Iranians interfere in the election to help elect Barack Obama because they think they'll get a better nuclear deal from him. And during that election, an Obama aide meets with the Iranians and talks about the dirt they have that will help Obama get elected. And the FBI finds out about that. We should not investigate that? So the hypocrisy is revealed just by changing the names. The FBI did what it absolutely had to do.
So, Michael, we have that there. What's on your list of the greatest unknowns about this report none of us have yet to see?
Well, for me, the greatest unknown is on the question of obstruction, because that's where the president has the most exposure and where there is just documented a lot of things, some of the things that he did in public himself. I think the issue here is that the Justice Department has a perception problem. They had a special counsel to insulate the investigation from politics and to insulate the result and give the public the confidence that the result was done by following the facts. And in this instance, the person that was there to do that didn't do that. And he left the decision to be exposed to the politics, to the appointed politicians, or, in this case, the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General, to make the decision. And Bill Barr may have made the right call, when folks go back and look at this and such, but the perception of it is a difficult one because it looks like the guy who was there to follow the facts didn't make the call.
And, Michael, let me add to that. Bill Barr happens to have pre-opined on this subject. Granted, he happens to have been appointed by Donald Trump since this started. Granted, but Robert Mueller always the Marine captain, always all about chain of command, was in fact following his chain of command.
Yeah, and what this did is that it gave the Democrats an opening. If Mueller had said, look, Mueller says there's not enough there for obstruction, and Barr agreed with him, then the argument would be over. There'd be no wind in their sails. But now they have this odd thing where Mueller says nothing, Barr, few months in, as Trump's attorney general, makes the call, and now Jerry Nadler says, I need to see all the homework. I need to see everything. We have to have hearings on this to assess it because it has a political tinge.
All right, Sam Stein. So how do the Democrats handle this, and how good a look will it be if they skip a step and subpoena Robert Mueller directly?
Well, from my conversations with Democrats, there's sort of a weird internal divide in the caucus right now. No one wants to tarnish Robert Mueller. They think it, in fact, would be impossible after having spent months building him up. The question really, the divide really is over whether to just move on from what's happened here, whether to focus on different issues and leave the Russia matter behind. And then, of course, there's a part of the party that just simply won't allow that, either because they are emotionally tied to it or also because they strategically think it's unwise to do so. And so what we can expect is that the committees, whether it's Judiciary or Oversight, is going to be calling up Bill Barr first, in part because he is the one who made the decision and wrote the memo, and they want to make sure that they can get information out of him before they bring back Mueller, who could potentially contradict what Barr has to say. Again, keep in mind, all of this is happening in this intense vacuum. We're operating off of a 4-page memo. Little is known on the Hill. There's a rush to try to find out information, but the information obviously is not being provided. And so Democrats are trying their best to hold back and wait and see if they can get their hands on the report before any of this happens. But of course, as Nadler said today, that could be a matter of weeks. We just don't know.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.